As usual, we have a global audience with us. Great to have you with us today. If you're not familiar with I4CP, we are the Institute for Corporate Productivity. We're your human capital research partner. We discover the people practices that drive high performance across all different areas of HR to help you see what's coming around the curve. We do this in a lot of ways, primarily though through our research. We do 4 to 6 major studies a year where we try and distinguish what high performance organizations are doing differently than low performers. We sort of look at the top quartile of companies, measure them against 4 fairly standard business metrics: profitability, revenue growth, market share, and customer satisfaction, and compare those with the lower quartile in whatever subject we're studying, whether it's succession planning, performance management, leadership development, you name it. We are also a member-based community, a member organization. So special welcome to anyone on the call joining us today from one of our hundreds of member organizations. You see here, they range in size from very large companies like Amazon, 3M, Microsoft, HP, Visa, and others. We've got a growing cohort of unicorn startup organizations, and they really span across all market verticals as well, from high-tech, manufacturing, financial, healthcare. We've got a lot of regional healthcare organizations, regional banks as well. If you're not with a member company, but would like to learn more about what that entails, the benefits, the investment, just reach out to any of us at I4CP or go to i4cp.com and we can get you that information. My name's Tom Stone. I'm a senior research analyst at I4CP, and I have the pleasure of most weeks of co-hosting Next Practices Weekly. This week, I'm joined by my colleague, Pat Murakami, Senior Director of Member Services, to co-host with me. Good morning, Pat.
Hi there. Happy to be here.
Great to have you with us, and you'll be facilitating the conversation with our special guests, who we'll be introducing in just a moment. But before that, a couple more quick announcements. This is Next Practices Weekly, and that means that most weeks we gather here at Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific for our hour together. You see, coming up on the 20th, next week, we'll have Buddy Benj, Global Head of Talent Insights at Edward Jones. I've been prepping with Buddy a little bit and definitely looking forward to that session. We're then going to take a couple of weeks off. As many of you know, we have a major I4CP conference the first week of March, and so we're going to take off the last Thursday in February and, of course, the first Thursday of March, because we'll be busy at the conference and hopefully seeing many of you in person there in Scottsdale, Arizona. I'll talk a little bit more about the conference at the end of the call, but we do have sessions coming up in March, including one featuring our own Rob Cross, SVP of Research here at I4CP, and then some great sessions coming, of course, later in April. A couple of other quick things. We do also do, less frequently, but we do a series of webinars at different dates and times for all of our global colleagues in the APAC region and the EMEA region. The next one coming up is for folks in the Asia Pacific area of the world, targeting that time zone a little bit better. You see the times there on the screen. This will be February 26th, where we'll be once again going over our priorities and predictions, sort of with a lens on that region of the world. You see the QR code on the screen, also the link that's been put in the chat. Please share this with your global colleagues. Many of you work for global organizations. Make sure they're aware of this upcoming event. We are a research firm, and so for the past couple of weeks, I've been letting folks know that we have a research study, a major one in the field, called Leadership in the Era of Distributed Work. By distributed work, we don't just mean where the work gets done, hybrid, return to office, flexible, et cetera. We also mean the many other ways in which work is distributed today across countless project teams, gig workers versus full-time workers, globally distributed across continents, and more. The QR code on the screen, once again, take a picture of that, open up the survey and fill it out a little bit later. It takes about 15 minutes. This one is focused on leadership capabilities and behaviors, not so much focused on leadership development programs. We've done other studies on that in the past, but we would encourage everyone on this call, please represent your organization, be part of this study. You'll be the first to receive the aggregate results, and then of course we'll come out with a full report in a couple of months. Speaking of which, our most recent large study was Workforce Readiness in the Era of AI. You can download the report, the brief, depending on your membership status. Links for that are being put in the chat. I encourage you to do that. We've been covering some of the key findings of the study in multiple webinars recently, both for members and non-members alike. So I'd encourage you to check out the results. Very powerful study, updating both a study we did in 2021 on workforce readiness broadly and a study we did on AI in 2023. All right, now with all of the announcements and reminders out of the way, I'm going to turn things over to you, Pat, to facilitate the conversation and introduce our special guest today.
Well, I'm excited to have Kristy Feldkamp and Daanish Ahmad from HP joining us. Welcome. Happy to have you here. Excited to hear what you're going to share. So as Tom was saying, we have a very HR-focused group of attendees on these calls, and you've both had really interesting careers, successful careers. So for everyone's benefit, can you introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your journey, and then titles being titles, what your roles encompass at HP?
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to start. So I'm really excited to be here, and thanks again to I4CP for the invitation. So I did see a few people in the chat who are joining from Michigan. So shout out to those in Michigan. That's where I grew up. And of course, if you grew up in Michigan, it's required that you work for the auto industry in some form or fashion. So that is indeed where I started my career at Ford Motor Company. I then headed west and ended up in the world of tech, which is where I've been for over 20 years and a bunch of different roles across the HR function. I did take a couple turns in finance. I worked in labor relations, lots of client-facing HR roles. Have been at HP in the talent and learning role now for about a little over 3 years. And what that includes are all of the company's enterprise-wide talent, performance, and career development practices, all the tools that go with using those things. And then we also have the skill building and development, leadership development from individual contributor up through the C-suite. And I'm now based in Boulder, Colorado, so enjoying the snow here today.
Well, like Kristy, also enjoying the snow today in the Boston area, which is where I'm based, but likewise grew up in the Midwest. Bring all those wonderful Midwest values along with me, although I'm not sure Kristy and I can agree on college football. We'll have to figure that out in the later conversation. I've had my professional career, though, entirely out in the Boston area and started in regulatory compliance before realizing that that's okay, but what's a lot more fun is marketing and communications. And so ended up moving into marketing roles at tech companies since 2010. And about 4 years into that, moved over into the world of communications and have been in different parts of communications, both internal in the space of PR, external in the space of PR, as well as internal in the space of employee communications for that time. I've been lucky enough to work at a bunch of different companies, all of which sell laptops of different kinds, and have learned really the importance of knowing your audience. It seems like an obvious thing to state, but it's actually quite easy to forget in the rush to get all the work done that we do need to get done. It's obviously very challenging, particularly at HP. With 58,000 employees, you have a lot of different types of employees, but incredibly fulfilling as a result of all the variety that comes with it. So again, now based here in Boston, it's a pleasure to work at HP and happy to be chatting with all of you.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for being here today, which brings us to HP's Work Relationship Index. So coming from a research-driven organization like I4CP, I'm a data person. And I love the interconnections between findings. As Tom said, we'll update surveys, but we'll add in new things. And just digging in to the numbers, you both know how much I love this research. When I discovered it 2 years ago, I was blown away at the depth and breadth of how it really looks at our personal relationship with work, made me think about my personal relationship with work, and then that global vision as well. That was my fangirl moment. So I recommend everyone go out online, and it's publicly available, so you can download the Work Relationship Index. You also, in this research, made me think about commonly held ideas about global workers and workforces. And so I was wondering, can you share with us what actually is the Work Relationship Index, and why did HP undertake this research?
Sure. So, I think in the simplest of terms, we undertook the research because we wanted to be able to track the world's relationship with work year over year to see how that relationship changes over time. And ultimately, what's driving that change in relationship, right? Like think about what the world looked like pre-2020, pre-pandemic, and then think about the expectations that now result post-pandemic. We learned a lot about how we could work as a result of that tremendous change to our work habits. And we wanted to understand, well, what of that change has stuck? What with that change is different? And what are things we just haven't noticed before, but we should have probably taken the time to figure out? And thus we thought, why not create a research survey that then provided insight for us to really fundamentally better understand how to serve employees. And as head of employee communications, I'm very distinctly interested in knowing this for the purposes of doing the job I have. But from a company standpoint, we obviously want to be able to do it on behalf of all the customers we serve, many of whom use HP products in the offices in which they work, and of course the jobs they do in those offices. So the study itself was very comprehensive. It analyzed over 50 aspects of people's relationships with work, including the role of work in their lives, which we found was not distinguishable. Work is life and life is work, and you can't separate the two so easily, at least. And how their ability, skills, tools, and workspaces, along with their leadership, drove ultimately the satisfaction they had in doing the work that they did. Now, given, of course, that our strategy at HP is to lead the future of work, a lot of this is done through the lens of employee experience. And so we wanted to make sure they had a really well-rounded point of view on that topic before going and speaking to our customers about what it means to lead the future of work. And Kristy, I think obviously you have to live this life every day specific to HP.
Yeah.
What does it mean for you in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, so this is our second year, as Pat mentioned, of conducting this research. And what's great about it is it gives us this incredible external perspective. As Daanish said, it's directly aligned to our business strategy, which is to lead the future of work. And what's great about working for a company with that as our business strategy, it's very employee-centric. And so really the things that we're experimenting with or having successes or learning from at HP are also directly applicable to what we can then advise our customers on. So I'm interested in it both for how can I apply these learnings to HP, but also how can I support the business in terms of generating revenue for HP and being a strong business partner. So kind of a dual motivation from my perspective.
And definitely, I would think many of the people on this call are possibly customers of HP and can jump in and also be thinking how it applies to them. With that in mind, can you talk a little bit about the overall methodology that you used? Describe it, and then maybe give us a high level of key takeaways that were jumped out.
Sure. So, I mean, I mentioned it's very comprehensive. So we specifically went to 12 countries around the world to perform this survey because we wanted to be global in nature. It's very easy, at least, to focus on North America, given we're a company headquartered in North America. But we wanted to make sure this represented what the experience and the relationship with work was globally. So it was actually just under 16,000 respondent survey across 12 countries, specifically 4 in each region, so to speak. And we actually cut that data by 3 different categories. The first is knowledge workers, which make up the bulk of respondents because obviously they represent the vast majority of the workforce, again, in this regard. In addition, we also cut it by IT decision makers. That's largely who we sell to. So we wanted to make sure to get a sense for if they had a distinct experience from that of the knowledge workers that our technology ultimately serves, and that so many of us ultimately serve. And then, of course, cut it by business leaders as well. And really, we wanted to do that because on the one hand, you can have the perception of knowledge workers and what it means for them. On the other hand, you can have the perception of business leaders and what it means for them. They obviously have relatively different experiences at work given what's in their remit. And we were very interested to see where did it diverge, but where did they converge in ways that might be surprising. And from a key takeaway standpoint, this first takeaway references last year's results, which, if you didn't know, was the world does not have a healthy relationship with work, which may not be all that surprising, but it wasn't all bad news, by the way. Last year, it was 27% of respondents reported having a healthy relationship with work. This year, it's 28%. So the world's relationship remains unhealthy. However, what's critical and important to understand is that the urgency to remedy this is only increasing. And both business leaders and knowledge workers agree on this. Again, thinking about that convergence of opinion, that's one of those things that's very, very clear. There's no question as to if this is important. It's critically important. Now, what 2024's survey did that 2023's did, and 2023 was really about just establishing a baseline and understanding some of the levers that could be pulled. 2024 was much more about understanding the things you could do immediately to help remedy this. And so what most workers and leaders agreed on in being important to improving that relationship was delivery of tailored, personalized work experiences. So the more you could tailor fit work to the people that are doing it, ultimately, the data suggests you're much better off in building a good relationship. Part of what we also found as key to, at least in correlation, driving a healthier relationship with work is use of AI, which not surprisingly has exploded, but surprisingly could be one of the ways you actually have a better relationship with work. But then all that said, it turns out who you work for and who you work with and who leads your company is still the overwhelmingly most important aspect of driving a good relationship with work. And you sit back logically, and that makes sense. You know, you go to work and you talk to somebody that tells you what to do. If you don't like them, that's a problem. If you don't trust them, that's a problem. But nonetheless, it is the most important aspect driving a healthy relationship with work. So those are the key takeaways. A lot of data underneath too, by the way, and I'd suggest we'll talk about more here, but the whole research report gets into much more detail than what we'll be able to cover today.
I agree that the data underneath it is fascinating. And as we dig in on each one of these, I mean, our relationship with work, as you said, work is life, life is work. And it's what, another 50 years and we'll be at 98% healthiness. If we did
that's right.
On 1 percentage point. Hopefully I'm retired by then, I think. But there is an urgency to change that unhealthy focus. Can you share a little bit more around what you found in that area?
Absolutely. So one, we saw a 7% increase in that urgency from business leaders. And what's critical to understand there is that the need to change, business leaders not only had a 7-point increase, they actually had, we asked both knowledge workers and business leaders how important it is to change this. Knowledge workers, of course, thought it was important. Business leaders thought it was even more important. So again, they both agree, but business leaders are finding it even more important for it to change now above and beyond that which knowledge workers have established. Where I think you're starting to see a bit of progress on this is the clarity with which you're starting to understand from a business leadership standpoint that our attention needs to be on the worker and their work experience. And that's fairly straightforward, but what is a bit of a change is that there isn't a 1 or 2 or 3 size or even 4 size fits quote unquote all approach to delivering the experience of working for a company. It really needs to, as best as it can be, tailored to that of each worker. And of course, there is a natural limit on what you can do, but where we are today with 2 or 3 modes isn't enough. It needs to be more. And the data that highlighted that is that when asked what workers ideally needed to feel happy and productive at work, we were hoping for a few things just to bubble up and say, these are the 3 things we should do. 95% of knowledge workers gave a unique and distinct response. So again, to the extent that it's possible and reasonable, offering choice is a critical mechanism for improving that relationship with work, and business leaders are really seeking to understand how they can offer that choice as best as possible.
Well, and choice is really what leads to a personalized work experience. And shout out to talent, well-being, employee experience leaders who are really trying to make that difference within their organization. I think we can all agree on, and I was also loved hearing that leaders are even more focused on the need that our work needs to be healthier, because without their endorsement, it can't happen. When we look at the future of work and we look at the tailored, personalized work experiences, what did you find there that might be useful for everyone on the call?
I think with respect to personalized experiences at work, that's what knowledge workers and leaders are looking for. So if you think about it from a talent acquisition perspective, that's becoming more heavily weighted in terms of the decision you make when you choose to accept a job or not. You know, think of the basics are, hey, I can get paid this salary, and hey, I can get this bonus. Well, now it's what kind of experience am I going to have at the office that is increasingly weighing on the decision. To that end, 87% of workers globally are willing to give up a portion of their salary to have more personalized and tailored work experience. That's not to say we should all go think about how we cut workers' salaries. That's crazy. But when they go through the decision-making process of, is this place right for me? They're not thinking necessarily, well, I need to get paid exactly what I'm getting paid right now if I'm going to make a move. They're thinking, I'll take less if I can work from home 4 days a week instead of 3, right?
It's the package.
Exactly, exactly. And the reason they're putting value in this is because they have a belief that this is going to improve their relationship with work and their well-being. So as I referenced earlier, it's not just work and life, it's the two together, and people are experiencing that to the point where if I can have a better experience at work, well, my well-being all over the place, outside of work and inside, it's going to be better. And if they could continue to have that aspect of their experience, ongoing personalization, ongoing tailoring of their work experience, then it would cause them at a 68% level to stay at their companies longer. So this is a mechanism for talent acquisition. It's a mechanism for retention too.
Yeah, and I'll just add a little bit here, because this is something that I found fascinating, and it was also very affirming with what I've seen in the human resources function, and in particular around learning. So there was a question in the chat, first of all, about have we correlated the survey to Gallup? We haven't done that yet that I'm aware of. What we've done internally at HP is recently we did a rewards preferences survey where we asked employees in 5 of our biggest countries what they preferred in terms of benefits that HP offers, and then specific to their learning styles, what did they prefer? And this was also affirming. We learned differences at the country level around, for example, folks in Mexico wanted more external education. Singapore was more receptive to microlearning. What we've done in terms of the learning styles to be very adaptable there is we've offered different learning experiences. And that's really to get at this personalized, tailored view that employees want. So that's one concrete example, but also to address the other commonly heard thing that we got from employees, which is, I don't have time to build my skills. And you'll hear more about how important skills are in the future of work here. But what does that look like in practical terms? We offer employees a number of skill building opportunities based on what they're interested in, what the company thinks is important, which career stage they're at. And then they can access that learning through a number of ways. That can be online. They can sign up to go to a learner lab on campus, because we do like employees to come to the office and have those interactions with each other. That's important. They can get their learnings delivered in a micro-learning format, so you can do nudges via Microsoft Teams delivered to your inbox, that kind of thing. So that's been something that we've really taken to heart, and we've seen an uptick in employee satisfaction in that area over the last couple of years.
I can verify that in my support of HP as a member, you really have leaned into meeting the employee where they are and helping them enrich their life. And I met with a member last week who shared that his work-life balance, he was modeling for his children because he wanted them to understand what a healthy work-life balance looked like. So this has got work is life, life is family, bigger implications. And moving on to the next point, a year ago, AI prompt writer was the job of the future, and now we're all AI prompt writers. using AI, it's rocketed to popularity, exploded. And our ongoing research says at I4CP, the ongoing research just says it's going to continue. You found a strong correlation with AI, the relationship with work, how people are using it and benefiting from it. Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Let's, if we don't mind jumping ahead to the bit about AI. It's really quite staggering the impact AI has had for those that took the survey. So first and foremost, the correlation is that those that reported using AI on a monthly basis scored 10 points higher in their relationship with work than those that did not, or I should say 11 points higher for knowledge workers and 10 points higher for business leaders. Nonetheless, obviously showing an increase in a healthy relationship with work. Why that's the case, we need to dig into more, but we know the correlation is there. Part of what they also report with respect to AI is that those that use it don't view it as a job threat. It's actually, to the point of the correlation, appearing to drive a better relationship with work. Part of this why this might be the case is that AI users are already customizing their use of AI to be more productive. They're seeing it as a tool to help them do their jobs, either more productively or more easily or more simply. And there's a belief amongst those that use it, nearly 75% of everyone, be those business leaders, knowledge workers, or ITDM, believe that use of AI will help them advance their careers. Interestingly, conversely, those that did not use AI actually saw their fear of it increase by 5 points year over year. And to us, the takeaway there was, from an HP standpoint, was like, how can we get AI into the hands of workers sooner or more quickly? And Kristy, I'll have a bit more to say about that in a second. Again, with respect to usage of AI, there was explosion across all demographics in the survey: knowledge workers, ITDMs, and business leaders. And across those three demographics, it was really interesting. Those that use it on an AI on a monthly basis saw three main benefits out of it. One, they thought it made their well-being better. Two, they thought it made them more productive. And three, they think it can help them advance their careers. When we asked those that used AI on a weekly basis, those same advantages increased by another 9 to 10 points across the board. So the takeaway there is the more that you use AI, the better off you are with respect to the experience you're having at work. One item that really stood out, though, also in the survey findings was a big difference, a big divergence in the belief of AI training being made available within a company to help workers do their jobs. Business leaders thought that sort of training existed in droves and was everywhere, and they had exactly what they needed to get that training. Knowledge workers thought that was the case dramatically less. So there's a big difference of opinion on if AI training is being made widely available to the employee base if you ask a business leader versus if you ask a knowledge worker. The data to us suggests that it's not made widely available enough for knowledge workers to then take advantage of the benefit. And this is critical because if those that use AI are seeing the benefits and seeing it very clearly, and those that use it even more are seeing even more of the benefits, it's critically important that companies offer that training so those that aren't as easily able to access it can get access to it. Otherwise, they'll see their fear of AI increase and lose the opportunity to improve their relationship with work. And Kristy, I think we've been doing a lot of this at HP. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I again really found these results super fascinating. We are really trying to take the scariness out of AI, since that definitely was shown. The fear of the unknown is in general, whether it's AI or something else, tends to create uncertainty for folks. So a couple things that we're doing. We in the last year deployed Eightfold, which is a talent intelligence platform that several people on the call will be familiar with. What we're using many features within the tool itself, but the first and most obvious one that brings a lot of benefit for employees and managers is helping them find jobs. So really candidate matching. It takes a skills first approach enabled by AI. What we're hearing from managers is that they're finding employees and candidates for their open roles that they never would have considered before, because they're either potentially outside the traditional function that they're applying for, but they're looking at it from a skills standpoint. So that has been an immediate benefit that employees have seen. We also are really doubling down on the training aspect of it, but practical application. So there's the acquiring the knowledge, and then there's building the skill, and you build the skill by applying the knowledge. And that happens with repetition and, daily habits. So we've deployed Copilot to over half of the organization so far. We're continuing to do that in ongoing phases. We have things like HR virtual assistant that we've built internally. And then we do offer a ton of training for employees around AI. Daanish and I are going to be in Barcelona in March for a big all-employee in Barcelona, but it's a global day of strategy and learning. And we have a bunch of employee breakouts in the afternoon where we're pretty excited because we're bringing in HP's AI PCs, and employees are going to have a chance to play around on those and really kind of figure out, well, what would this look like in my daily work? So we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah,
I want to jump in here. Let me jump in just for a second
Yeah.
and a couple things. I want to remind everyone that they can use the chat to ask questions. Kristy has already sort of responded naturally to a couple of those that came in earlier. I wanted to give kudos to HP and the two of you on this point of really going full on with training on AI, the learning piece. Our workforce readiness in the era of AI study found that those organizations that are getting the most benefit out of AI are definitely doing that. They're providing training not just to a select few, but to most or really all employees, as appropriate. And I wanted to double click on one of the things you mentioned, a finding from the study around the fear, anxiety, concern around AI. You said, I think it's interesting because I think there's two different types of fear that there are concern that people can have. You noted in your study that there was more fear amongst those that hadn't used it much yet. Our study found that there was a different type of fear amongst those that were already using it, daily or regularly. There's the fear of the unknown, which is I think what your study is picking out and identifying. And in the other case, though, interestingly, our study found that there was more fear of a different type. Fear knowing that once you know what it can do and how powerful it can be, your eyes are opened in a way they weren't before as to what tasks it could replace, what entire jobs maybe it could replace. Can you speak a little bit to that? What are you doing to assuage that kind of concern as you're leveling people up?
So I can speak to it from what we call corporate affairs at HP. That's our parlance for communications. So being in the role that I was in prior to running employee communications, I was leading thought leadership, which is the genesis of this study. And of course, I'm getting access to the data as our research partner is completing it. And I see the data insight that says, oh, management thinks they're delivering training and knowledge workers aren't. So I'm like, well, in corporate affairs, I'm management. And I thought we were delivering training, but maybe we're not. So I went and asked around, and I swear this answers your question in some capacity. And we ended up building training relevant to very specifically the type of prompts that you would write in something like ChatGPT to create work product that was what we as communications practitioners would ultimately create. And so by providing that very specific training, two things came as a result. One is our team understood how they could use AI to help them do their very specific job, right? That then exposed the point you made, Tom, which is, oh God, this is actually doing it pretty well, like really well, like maybe too well. And that last part of the too well, at least in my experience, there isn't a too well. The output of some of the work we would ask generative AI to do clearly had deficiencies, but it saved, in my personal experience, if I needed to write a draft of an employee communication, for example, I'd create a prompt, I'd have generative AI produce a result. It was maybe 40% of the way there, but it saved me 2 hours of work. And so I think by getting clear on how to use AI specific to the role that you have, not only can you see what it can do, and it's impressive, but you also can see what it can't do that you can. So as a result, you understand that gap, you sort of build your day-to-day around that moment and go, okay, I'm going to have it do this thing, which saves me 2 hours out of my day, but then I know I have to step in to take care of the rest. Our guy that leads AI at HP's, smart guy named Scott Hallworth, had a kind of a great analogy in simple terms. He's like, right now, generative AI is a bit like an intern, somebody that you got to teach a lot to, has, doesn't know what they don't know, which is great, but also an opportunity for you to then step in when the moment is right and make what they produce just right for what you need or what the company needs. So it is powerful. I think if you teach people how to use it in a way that's relevant to them, they also see the limitations, and that fear dissipates quite quickly.
So there's an old saying, fear is never boring.
That's true.
But it's not fun. And I believe it was Diane Gerson, who used to lead HR for IBM, who said they ask people, what do you hate to do? And can we get AI to do it?
Mm.
To get people to lean in and see the possibilities and what could they hand off. And it made people lean in and test it a little bit more, because to your point, you don't want to see that fear being added to your relationship with work.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've got, and I'm wondering if we can double click into some of the details. I know we've got a few slides here. We skipped a few slides about the double click on personalization. So can we show a few more details around the data that you found?
Yeah, so there was a question asked in chat earlier I thought was a really good one. It's like, okay, what does personalized work experience mean? Like, what are some examples of that? And we didn't get into the specific examples because when we asked the question, the responses were 95% unique. But what we found is there were some common aspects that then I think become levers we can think about to deliver that personalized experience. And there's two views on this. One is these sort of segments, which is having access to different tech that best fits my working style. People at my organization can work in the way that best suits their need. Think of this as small groups, work in big groups, work on your own and then come together in a meeting to discuss something. Working for an organization that personalizes trainings to fit my learning styles. So if you like video on demand training, great. If you like in-person training, great. If you like a mixture of both, great. But being able to deliver those different modes. Having the ability to personalize my workspace at the office. Some people like to have just the laptop. Others want to have 15 monitors. What's the opportunity there? And then working for a company that allows me to define and shape what a flexible working environment looks like to me. And the next slide gets into a bit more detail there. And just, we can move off the slide, but the key point here is workers put a lot of value on this. Leaders put even more value on this. So workers and leaders agree on this. There's no gap. They agree. And the people that have the ability to actually decide on what that work experience in the future looks like, the leaders, they think this is more important than the knowledge workers, which to me was a very striking finding. Another way to think about what personalized work means is to think in terms of how workers were reporting on what they were willing to give up to get more of X, Y, A, and B. So in case of experience, determining where they work, determining when they work, how they work, and then having more of those three aspects delivered to them as options for ways they could work on the whole. So again, they relatively were willing to give out similar amounts of value in terms of salary to each one of those aspects, but where, when, how, and then what that combination of three things represents as options, those are the sort of things that they showed commonality around with respect to personalized work experiences.
I agree with you, though. I don't think I'd pressure test those numbers.
Yeah, no, certainly not. But again, to the point I made earlier, these are the sort of decisions people are making when they decide to leave a company, to take another job. Yeah. I think I high leveled on this point, but again, as time has gone on, you're seeing AI propagate from the top of the organization down through those that are individual contributors, and the numbers are increasing dramatically year over year. And this was measured year over year in our work relationship index.
There is a
These were the-
question in the chat that I'd like to dig in on, which is handling security aspect of implementing AI within your company.
So this is, again, I'll reference a gentleman at our company named Scott Hallworth, who's really focused on coming up with the right, one, ethical approach to AI, and then two, being very clear about how you could use AI in your workday. And so we have sandboxed generative AI environments that allow us to put proprietary information in and then produce results by creating a prompt. That is a really critically important tool that's available to us. It's been made very clear that you can use ChatGPT to do non-proprietary things, but you cannot put company data into ChatGPT and ask it to do anything. It's been made very clear. What I've now seen the evolution turn into is more bespoke tools are being created specifically for HP employees, meaning they are built, owned, and operated by HP, such that we have much more flexibility to use generative AI to do work because it's within the bounds of HP's security perimeter. And it's been made very clear what we can use generative AI, even within the bounds of the HP security perimeter, to do. And in that regard, I think we're quite a leading company, and we're probably a year ahead of everyone else, which to me makes it very easy to have these conversations, Pat.
I wanted.
Go ahead, Tom.
Go ahead, Pat.
I was just going to say, in our research around AI, there are definitely different categories, and you are leading edge. Practical practice amongst members is a sandbox, which I love that definition because you can so clearly picture it's a controlled environment and I can ask questions there safely. And I would not want people taking confidential information out into the public domain because who knows? So the chat boxes are the sandbox is definitely.
Well, I mean, even with ChatGPT, they retrain ChatGPT on the data you're inputting. So it by nature gets used in some capacity. So you really can't put it in there.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I just wanted to jump in and agree with you that I think you are a leading organization in this regard. What we've been seeing on the last few slides that I've been sort of cycling through, as you also expressed, was that your business leaders and your IT decision makers, the last couple of columns here on the last couple of slides, even higher results than the broader base knowledge workers in terms of the benefits they're seeing. And that's what our study, again, Workforce Readiness in the Era of AI, also found was that the companies that are most scaling, most operationalizing their use of AI have really gotten the leaders involved, both with using it, but also in sort of modeling that use so that others can see the benefits, giving them ample training. Kristy, I'm wondering if you could speak to that. What was the intentionality there, maybe early on, thinking back a couple of years ago, or just within the past couple of years, to leverage the leaders in these ways?
Leverage the leaders specifically for
leverage them in terms of modeling use, but also just making sure that they were the ones sort of at the forefront using AI, as much or more than the knowledge workers that report up to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are very fortunate because our CEO and our ELT are big advocates of continuous learning. And because AI is so fundamental to our business strategy, they really kind of lean into this in terms of how they talk about it, how they use it within their work. And even, our CEO Enrique talks about books that he's reading around AI and how he himself is getting more educated. So that has happened fairly naturally, fortunately, in terms of the leaders and how they're engaging and how they're talking about AI. The workshops, the breakouts that I mentioned that we're going to be hosting next month, those are being co-led by our senior leaders. So Scott Hallworth, who's been mentioned a couple times, a person on his team who's a VP in the organization, and then the woman who heads up our commercial PC business, which again, where we have our AI PCs, she's going to be co-leading that as well. So we do have a lot of our senior business leaders. Because of HP's business strategy, it's kind of a hand-in-hand type of situation. So that's really how that's played out. Somebody asked in the chat about tell us more about the creation of the sandboxes. I would suggest you chat with your IT team about that. They set it up so it's completely secure. And it's been fantastic. Different groups, investor relations. We had a private sandbox in HR where you can put company data in there so it's protected. It's not, ChatGPT is, you're putting it into the public domain. And a lot of employees don't realize that. So you should chat with your IT department. It's been a game changer for us.
So in thinking about Barcelona and modeling of AI coming from the top takes me to trust, our final point we're going to call out here. And we've been doing research on trust for the last several years, and just a growing importance around employees needing to trust their leaders, and leaders understanding what that trust means. What kind of trust is the most important is what we have been sharing in our research. You found that trust is critical to drive good employee relationships at work. And just if you could dig in on that one a little bit.
Yeah, it shouldn't be surprising given all the prior research that this is the case. But one, people still want to have a boss and leadership that they feel cares about them and can relate to their problems. Another way of saying empathy. And they are looking for it now. To the point of the stat here, 78% of knowledge workers say it's important to have leadership that demonstrates it. The key finding here is that only 28% of knowledge workers say they experience it, which of course begs the question, why is that the case? And what we found is that leadership may know what empathy is and may want to provide empathy and deliver it, but they don't feel confident in their ability to do so. So if we take a look at the next slide, you'll see that this is just important to point out because generationally, this is only becoming more important. So it's really important we solve for this because as millennials and Gen Z become larger parts of the workforce, the importance increases in line with obviously the sample of the population they represent. But with respect to business leaders needing help, they know this. Like, they know empathy is important. There's no question about this anymore. But they're not typically confident in their ability to deliver it, right? So only 43% of business leaders feel confident in their human and hard skills. In this case, the human skills, the empathy and the delivery thereof is what we are focused on. So it's like the difference in football, and I'll use this, since this is a largely North American audience, it's like knowing the importance of being able to score 7 points or 6 points in the football field and getting into the end zone, but not actually knowing how to execute the plays to get there. Or if we're thinking of football properly, it's the importance of knowing to score a goal, but not knowing how to pass the ball down the field to be able to get in a position to put it into the net, right? These are very simple things to understand, but they're very difficult things to execute. What we also found, though, and perhaps there's something we can learn from this, I'm sure there is that female leaders had a statistically significant, stronger belief in their human skills to deliver things like empathy. In fact, they were 12 points more confident than their male counterparts. So what we would want to do in the future is dig into, well, why? Again, that begs the question, why? And then use that answer to say, okay, well, if we can deduce what creates that increase in confidence, then what are the things we need to do to arm everyone with those same tools to increase their confidence in a commensurate way? So again, leadership knows that trust is important. Knowledge workers mark it as the most important thing, but delivering it is a much more difficult task. And our ability to highlight to leaders how they can deliver it and enable them with the skills to deliver it is critical for us to ultimately serve knowledge workers and their desire for great trust with leadership.
One thing that I'll add here, that if you download the more detailed report, you'll see, I thought it was fascinating, is the way that female business leaders describe what is empathy is different than the way that male business leaders describe it, which suggests a fundamentally different way of approaching the same goal, to use Daanish's analogy. Women business leaders tend to describe empathy as using more soft skills and flexibility, whereas male business leaders tend to define it more around direct actions, recognizing accomplishments, valuing employees. So it is a really interesting nuance in the data set, just in terms of asking people, what does empathy mean to you?
a great nuance, and also a shout out to Daanish for that global football set of analogies there.
I used to work for an English woman, and she always used to tell me, okay, let's talk about real football now, which is somebody that grew up in Ohio. I was like, okay, but lesson taken.
Oh, well, I'm looking at the clock, and as the time winds down, can you sum up, I guess, advice for HR leaders? I know you've don't have a wide open hours to talk about this, but what are your recommendations for HR leaders knowing the study as intimately as you do and having 2 years of data?
Well, I'll make the recommendations the study implicates, and Kristy, you can obviously add on as you wish, given you're the practitioner. One, think about to what extent you can personalize the work experience for your workforce. And look, you can't go 100% to the end of it's completely personalized, right? But how can you push it a little bit further than you are today? Second, how can you make it easy for people to use AI in a responsible manner in your workforce, right? If you don't have a plan, think of one at minimum, and then find out who you need to work with in your company to make it happen. And that's something that requires more than HR, more than comms. In our case, it requires obviously our product business units that make the stuff and our IT team that actually allows us to use the stuff. Ultimately, though, again, trust is incredibly important. So doubling down on enabling your leaders to deliver on human skills, empathy, caring for their workforce in a way that their workforce best experiences and understands it. There's no amount you can invest in that's enough. I would suggest investing as much as you can.
Yeah, I would build on that last point because someone put in the chat asking about the 2025 current administration and how do we anticipate trust and employee experience going forward. It's interesting. We're really living this in the U.S., of course, and in Canada, you know, and globally. Last year, though, in 2024, over 80 countries had elections. And so, and many of them had a change in the current administration. So Edelman is our research partner who worked with us on this, and they also do a lot of research specifically in the area of trust in institutions, trust in government institutions, trust in corporations. And so thinking about the fact that employees bring their political identities into the world of work every day, as Daanish said up at the beginning, life is work, work is life. How do we as HR leaders and business leaders continue to cultivate that trust through empathy, through caring, through emotional connection with employees, given these geopolitical dynamics that are happening? So I think as we consider what that means for us as leaders and how we coach the businesses and the clients that we support, that's going to become increasingly important.
Can you share with this audience a little bit about HP's leadership principles?
Yeah, sure. So because of our evolved business strategy, we said, hey, this is actually a perfect time to have a dialogue about, well, what does HP need to lead this transformation, to lead in the future of work? And so we set about an exercise with our CEO and our top 300 leaders in the company to co-create a new set of leadership principles. And we socialized those at our senior leader meeting last December, and we just published them actually in January. And really kind of 3 big pillars, starting with the customer, developing the team, and owning the outcome. And threaded throughout, you will see the language of empowerment and coaching and having that empathy for employees, as well as deeply understanding both their needs as well as the customer needs. So it kind of speaks to the personalization. So it was great. We got to directly apply the WRI findings as well as some of our own internal research to that exercise. So we'll keep you posted on how it plays out, because the language is one thing, bringing it to life is really where it's at.
Well, 2 years in the making, getting you on this call, you did not disappoint. Thank you so much for sharing the insights. I really recommend to everyone on the call to go online. I know the link has been put in the chat several times, but you will be blown away by the information there, and you probably won't know what to do with it. So listen to this call again to get the highlights called out. But thank you, Daanish and Kristy, both for giving us.
Thank you for having us.
Sharing the insights. I'm going to hand this back over to Tom. Thank you, Tom, for letting me join you today. It was a fangirl moment for me. I appreciate it.
Well, very good. Thank you, Pat, for facilitating the conversation. And thank you, Daanish and Kristy. Great insights shared and backed up by some outstanding research that you did in partnership with Edelman. I'm glad you mentioned the Edelman broader trust research. That's something that I've certainly looked to each year. Their Edelman, I think it's called Trust Barometer. So I'd encourage people to check that out. As you said, there have been a lot of changes coming at us recently between COVID several years ago, AI disrupting the workforce, not just in the US, but new administrations coming into place in many parts of the world. So thanks for bringing that up. Thank you, Kristy. Thank you, Daanish. You're getting a lot of love both in the chat and with emojis here. Great insights shared. So great to have you. I said earlier in the call that I would once again plug our Next Practices Now conference. It is right around the corner. We've been talking about it seemingly since last March when we held it in 2024. This year it's in early March, March 3rd through the 6th, so just a few weeks away. Still time to get registered. We also do have a virtual option, which obviously is not the same as being in person, but you do get to hear all of the main sessions. You see here a great lineup of just some of the speakers. There's probably 3 times as many as those shown here on the screen. Great listing of some CEOs, former CEOs, CHROs, heads of various functional areas of HR from great companies, book authors, thought leaders, you name it. So just use the QR code there that's in the left, or i4cp.com/conference to learn more about our rapidly approaching conference coming up in just a few weeks. Also want to note, as we always do, that if you've attended today's call, it is available for a recertification credit hour from either HRCI or SHRM. So if you have certs from either of those organizations, just jot down the relevant program ID or activity ID, and you'll be all set there. Once again, I want to thank Zeta for your assistance producing today's event. Pat, Daanish, and Kristy, great information shared, and want to hope everyone has a great rest of their week, and we'll see you again for Next Practices Weekly next week. Bye-bye now.